Episode 10, Joe Gallo, the clown prince who died laughing. This is Criminal Code, where true stories are darker than fiction and every legend begins with blood. Tonight we open the book on one of the mob's wildest chapters, a tale of madness, ambition, and bullets in the dark. Not every mobster wanted to be feared. Some wanted to be famous. This is the story of a man who wore chaos like a suit and smiled in the face of death. His enemies called him crazy, but the streets, they called him something else. The clown prince of the Mafia. Joe Gallo wasn't your typical mobster. While other wise guys kept low, Gallo craved the spotlight. A slick-talking, wild-dressing lunatic with a love for movies and mayhem. Born in 1929 in Red Hook, Brooklyn, he grew up in the streets, a product of chaos, ambition, and pure madness. Even as a kid, they said he had eyes like a snake, cold, sharp, and always scheming. By his 20s, he was running with the Profaci crime family. But Gallo had bigger dreams. He didn't want to follow orders. He wanted to rewrite them. While other mobsters were building quiet rackets, Joe was building a legend. He read Nietzsche in prison, talked philosophy with inmates, and called himself Joe the Genius. But behind the brains was a ticking time bomb. Gallo didn't care about old rules, old bosses, or peace treaties. He wanted war, and he'd get it. The Profaci problem. Joe Gallo didn't just join the Profaci family, he infected it. The boss, Joe Profaci, ran things like a medieval king, taking big cuts, demanding tribute, and ruling with an iron fist. But Gallo, he wasn't built for kissing rings. He looked at Profaci and saw weakness, old, greedy, predictable. In 1961, Gallo made his move. He kidnapped 4 top Profaci men, including Joseph Colombo, who would later become a boss himself. The message was clear: we're not playing by your rules anymore. What followed was war, silent killings, backroom betrayals, and bullets in the night. They called it the First Colombo War, and Joe Gallo was right in the middle, grinning like a lunatic the whole time. Prison and philosophy. Eventually, Gallo got pinched. He went away for 7 to 10 years on extortion, but prison didn't break him, it fed him. While other wise guys lifted weights or played cards, Gallo read Kafka, Nietzsche, and Dostoevsky. He said he was enlightened now, a man of thought and action. He even wrote poetry in his cell. One inmate called him the only gangster who ever quoted Shakespeare before a beatdown. But don't let the books fool you. Joe never lost his edge. He just sharpened it. Media of Crazy Joe. By the time Gallo got out in 1971, the streets had changed. But Joe hadn't. He stepped out in a sharp blue suit, walking like a movie star, ready to reclaim Brooklyn. The Colombo family, still torn apart. Old enemies were dead or ducking. And Joe, he was ready to reignite the fire. But this time, he wasn't just about territory. He was about fame, TV interviews, press photos, even talking to the Black Panthers. Joe Gallo was mixing the mob with politics, media, and pure chaos. A mobster in the spotlight. Gallo loved the camera. He played up his Crazy Joe name like it was a brand. He hung out in Manhattan restaurants, joked with celebrities, and acted like the streets were his stage. He even started writing a script for a movie about his life. Hollywood agents were actually calling. But behind the flashing cameras, the violence hadn't stopped. He was still pushing in on rackets, still threatening old foes, still acting like he was untouchable. And the commission? They were watching. The Last Supper. April 7th, 1972. It was Joe Gallo's 43rd birthday. He celebrated at Umberto's Clam House, a small Italian joint in Little Italy. He brought his wife, his bodyguard, and a few friends. They laughed. They drank. They ate spaghetti and lobster. But around 5 a.m., as Gallo stood near the bar, a gunman walked in and opened fire. Joe was hit in the back. He stumbled out the door, bleeding onto the pavement, still trying to stand, still trying to smile. He died in the street, the clown prince gunned down like a punchline. The legacy of chaos. Joe Gallo's death wasn't just a hit, it was a message. He broke too many rules, got too loud, too bold. But in death, he became a legend. Books, songs, movies, even Bob Dylan wrote about him. Some say the hit was ordered by Colombo loyalists. Others whisper it was the commission itself, tired of the circus. Either way, one thing was clear. Joe Gallo didn't die a boss, he died a legend. The strange alliances. Joe wasn't just making headlines, he was making waves. Rumors spread that he was meeting with the Black Panthers, trying to build a cross-racial criminal alliance, something completely unheard of in the mob world. To old-school bosses, this was insanity, but to Joe, it was strategy. He believed the future of crime was politics plus media plus chaos, and he was ready to lead it. He didn't care who he upset, not even Carlo Gambino. Kajda's patience runs out. Behind the scenes, the bosses were furious. Joe's behavior was too public, too flashy, and too unpredictable. He was inviting heat on everyone, not just himself. FBI attention, newspaper headlines, angry politicians. Joe had become a liability to the entire underworld. The commission met behind closed doors, and when the heads of the 5 families agree on something, it's already done. Joe Gallo's name was quietly added to the list. Exceeded is set. The job was delicate. Joe was too well known, too public. They couldn't send amateurs. It had to be clean, quick, and loud enough to send a message. It's believed that the hit was ordered by Carmine Persico, but others point fingers at Albert Gallo's crew, his own brother's faction. Whoever did it, they picked their moment carefully. April 7th, 1972, a celebration, a perfect target. The bullets fly. Eyewitnesses say at least one man, possibly 2, entered Umberto's clam house and walked straight toward Joe. No words, just gunfire. 32 caliber rounds ripped through the air. Panic, screams, chairs flipped, plates shattered. Joe tried to run, bleeding from his neck and back. He stumbled outside into the early morning air, collapsed on the sidewalk, and died with his eyes wide open. The street was silent again. The clown had taken his final bow. Aftermath and confusion. The NYPD was flooded with false leads. The shooter, never officially caught. Suspects, many. But the mob closed ranks. No snitching, no answers. Gallo's widow, Sina Esseri, gave interviews claiming it was a setup. Others believed he was betrayed by someone at the table. But one thing was certain. No one at that dinner came out untouched. Joe's blood had splashed across more than just the floor. Art imitates death. In the years that followed, books, films, and songs kept Gallo's name alive. Martin Scorsese referenced him. Bob Dylan sang about him in Joey. Actors modeled mob characters after him, not the smart ones, but the wild cards. His madness, his fashion, his drama, it was all too cinematic to die. Gallo had what he always wanted, immortality, not in the streets, but on screen. The final laugh. Some say Joe Gallo saw it coming, that he lived every day knowing the end would be loud, public, and unforgettable. And maybe he wanted it that way. He didn't want to fade away in prison or end up like other gangsters forgotten. So he chose to burn fast, to be the man who stood out, who caused chaos, who died laughing. In the end, the joke was on all of us. Brooklyn divided. After Joe's death, the streets didn't calm down, they fractured. Brooklyn was torn between those who respected his rebellion and those who thought he brought shame to the code. Some young wise guys saw Joe as a revolutionary, the first mobster who wasn't afraid to be loud, different, modern. But the old guard, they called him a clown, a liability, and they were determined to wipe his name from the streets. Azel Lalo brothers struggle. After Joe was gone, his brothers, Albert and Larry Gallo, were left behind. Albert tried to hold the crew together, but loyalty faded fast without Joe's charisma. Rackets dried up, crews defected, and the Colombo family tightened the noose. Joe's war had become his brother's burden, and the streets, once loud with Gallo fire, began to grow cold. The price of spotlight. Gallo's fame didn't just bring him down, it haunted those around him. His widow was harassed by reporters. His daughter was hidden away, and old friends avoided the subject. One former associate said, "He thought he was untouchable, but this life, it touches everyone eventually." That's the cost of mixing showbiz with mob hits. Indices curse. Umberto's Clam House, once a quiet joint, became a morbid tourist attraction. People lined up to sit where Joe sat, to eat the same plate, to take pictures in the spot where he bled out. But for the staff and the locals, the place was cursed. Within a year, business plummeted. The energy felt off. Whispers of haunting spread, and to this day, some swear you can still feel Joe's presence when the streets go quiet. Law enforcement's blind eye. The NYPD never solved Joe's murder, and the truth is, they didn't care to. To many cops, Gallo was a headache they were glad to lose. Too noisy, too complicated, too unpredictable. One detective later admitted, "The streets were quieter without him. That was good enough for us." In the world of mob justice, the cops often knew when to look the other way. The media's obsession. Journalists loved Joe Gallo. He gave them what no other mobster did: access and attitude. He'd wink at the camera. He'd drop philosophical quotes in interviews. He'd say things like, "I'm not a criminal. I'm an artist with a violent audience." Magazines, documentaries, newsreels, Joe became a cult figure, the man who turned organized crime into theater. For all his madness, Joe lived by his own twisted version of honor. He didn't rat, he didn't beg, he didn't hide. He believed in living loud, fighting back, and never bowing down, even when the entire underworld was against him. To some, that made him reckless. To others, it made him the last real gangster. Joe and the celebrities. Gallo loved brushing shoulders with the rich and famous. He dined at elite spots, cracked jokes with Jerry Orbach, and talked business like he was one of Hollywood's own. He didn't just want to be respected, he wanted to be recognized. The cameras didn't scare him, they fed him. He once said, "Mobsters who hide die small. I plan to go out big." The Gallo crew's code of silence. Even after the hit, no one close to Joe talked. Not his brothers, not his crew, not even his bodyguard that night, who some say disappeared shortly after. It was more than fear, it was loyalty. For all his chaos, Joe inspired real devotion. His men followed him not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Crazy Joe was dangerous, but he made people feel invincible. The Colombo retaliation. The Colombo family didn't celebrate Gallo's death publicly. They feared the FBI was watching, feared another street war. But behind closed doors, they tightened their grip. Rackets were seized. Crew members were warned. Any trace of Gallo's influence was erased block by block. Joe had become a ghost, and the Colombos made sure that ghost would never rise again. Gallo's hidden rackets. What most people forget is, Joe wasn't just chaos. He was smart. Behind the madness were rackets that made serious money: gambling spots, loan sharking, even silent stakes in clubs. Some of those rackets kept running for years after he died, with cash still flowing to quiet hands. There are whispers that some legit businesses in Brooklyn today still trace their cash roots back to Gallo. His legacy didn't just bleed, it banked. The woman behind the madman. Joe's wife, Sina Esseri, was more than just arm candy. She was sharp, well-spoken, and fiercely loyal. She stood by him through chaos, through war, and even that final night at Umberto's. After his death, she published books, did interviews, and fought to control his legacy. She didn't call him crazy, she called him a misunderstood genius. To her, Joe wasn't a gangster, he was a revolutionary in a suit. The birthday curse. April 7th, Joe's birthday, became infamous. Not just for the hit, but for what followed. Every year after, something strange seemed to happen to people connected to that day. Accidents, arrests, sudden deaths. Call it coincidence, call it karma. But those close to Joe began calling it the birthday curse, and none of them celebrated it again. Gallo's last laugh. Gallo knew his lifestyle was a target. He joked about it, even dared it to happen. He once told a reporter, "If they hit me, I hope it's on my birthday. That way I'll go out with cake in my stomach and champagne in my blood." The words stuck, because that's exactly what happened. To the mob, he was a liability. To history, he became a myth. And myths don't stay buried for long. The Clam House reopens. Months after the hit, Umberto's Clam House reopened. Same name, same walls, but the vibe? Never the same. Tourists came for the food, but stayed for the story. Photos of Joe, blood-stained sidewalk tales, whispered rumors. It was less a restaurant and more a shrine. Even mob guys avoided it. Too much attention, too much bad luck. The place became a crime scene frozen in time. The FBI's missed shot. The FBI had dozens of files on Joe Gallo, wiretaps, surveillance, jailhouse intel, but they could never pin him for the real dirt. He was too smart, too slippery. One agent wrote, "He lived like a madman but covered his tracks like a ghost." Even when they wanted to protect him, Joe refused to cooperate. He told a Fed once, "If I ever rat, I'll haunt myself." Crazy Joe's fashion game. While other gangsters wore dull suits, Gallo rocked red turtlenecks, white jackets, and bold sunglasses. He didn't dress to blend in. He dressed to stand out. To him, fashion was warfare, intimidation by style. People stared, cameras flashed, but that's what he wanted. "If they're gonna shoot me," he said, "I want them to see me coming." Sinatra and Gallo. Rumor alert. Some claim Frank Sinatra was once spotted chatting with Joe at a private lounge. Was it business? Respect? Curiosity? No one knows. But Gallo told someone afterward, "Even the stars know who's real." Whether it happened or not, the legend only grew, because when Crazy Joe's name was involved, the line between truth and myth blurred on purpose. A mind made for madness. Behind all the flash, Joe was a strategist. He read chess books, he studied revolutionaries, he planned hits like puzzles, quiet, clean, theatrical. He believed the mob needed to evolve, to think smarter, move faster, be bigger than tradition. Old bosses thought he was just noise, but Joe, he thought he was the future. That smile. People close to Joe always remembered one thing, that smile. Even when he was angry, even when he threatened someone, even when a gun was drawn, that sly, crooked grin never left his face, like he knew a joke no one else could hear, like he was the director of the movie, and the rest were just extras. One guy said, he smiled like a man who'd already read the last page. The kid who drew blood. Joe's first known hit wasn't at 30, it wasn't even 20. He was just 17 when he stabbed a rival in a pool hall dispute, not for money, not for orders, but for respect. That kid walked away bleeding. Joe walked away smirking. Word spread fast. That Gallo kid, he's got steel in his veins. It was the beginning, not of a career, but of a legend. The last frame. Imagine it. A foggy New York street, an empty plate of lobster, blood on the pavement, camera flashes. And in the middle of it all, Joe Gallo still smiling. The mob didn't know what to do with him in life, and they still don't in death, because Crazy Joe wasn't just a gangster. He was the final act of the old world and the first taste of the new. You've just heard the story of Joe Gallo, the clown prince of the Mafia, a man who turned crime into theater and left a trail of legends behind. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe. We need more soldiers to join the family. New episodes dropping weekly. This is Criminal Code 4747. Welcome to the crew. 6 an empty plate of lobster adds richness without tipping you over the credit cliff.